we assume you got that base level of stuff. You've helped somebody create an outcome, and now it's time to charge. So
looking at how to get your first client, like obviously no one's going to walk up and say, hey, here's money.
welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where today we're going to break down getting your first client on the podcast that was built for coaches by coaches, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. Andrew, what's up, big guy?
Oh, you know, the sky.
That's fair. The stealing's up for me.
We're gonna have my dad jokes in case I ever have kids one day.
There you go.
Yeah, no, it's Monday. It's a good start to the week. We got a lot of different projects that we're juggling, so that's always a good time.
Yeah.
Coming back from Florida, got to see the girlfriend. So how about you?
Was away at NASCAR this past weekend, which was a lot of fun. Broke out my best hillbilly and just had a good time. Definitely my people. Lots of American flags and watching cars drive around in a circle or triangle in this scenario, which was I still can't believe 2 years ago when I went, I was like, all right, let's just go, because why not? And how much fun it actually is. So here we are, Monday, recovering after a weekend of not as much sleep as I would like.
Yeah, I feel like that that would have been the crowd to have Trump up on the big screen talking about the bombing. Yeah, bunch of USA. The recruiters were out there pulling people in the Marine Corps real quick.
Crazy that last year during the NASCAR race in Poconos, that was when Trump got shot in the ear. So like the next morning, the amount of chanting of USA and stuff like that. And then this go around, NASCAR, Pocono, the bombing. It's like, there's something with going to Poconos and watching NASCAR with the US doing some things. So
they time it. Someone has a really sick sense of humor. They're like, yeah.
So
rally the troops this weekend.
Anyways, so getting your first client. This is going to admittedly be one of those like you could do episodes, I think. For sure, there's a lot of options here, and I think it's going to really depend on what you like to do and how you like to run your business. But before we jump into the could do's on your first client, you cool if we take like 3 to 5 minutes to break down what I hope you have already done per se? Is that a fair starting ground, you think, Andrew?
Yeah, for sure. Anything that you think I've done? What do you mean? Oh, like in the history?
No. Like, if you don't have a certification and you have no audience and nobody knows that you're a personal trainer and you can't even train yourself and you've never done a bench press or whatever the things are, that there's just a checklist of things that you should probably have already done. Which I think most of them we'd all get, we'd all understand, but a lot of people that make assumptions in this world, us included. So I think, from that perspective, maybe on the knowledge and ability to create an outcome side of things, like what are the things you would say somebody should have already done before trying to get their first paying client?
I mean, that's such a loaded question simply for the fact that there are so many different avenues for people to get paying clients, which is one of the reasons why I think it is so paralyzing for people to consider, hey, I have this passion. How do I actually monetize this? How do I start to see myself making this a career? And that's one of the reasons why, thinking about topics, this one really was at the top of the list. And when I think about table stakes or the price of admission, which is what my interpretation of your question is, I don't really think that there actually is a specific criterion list. Although I will say that for the sake of this conversation, we'll assume that you have a certification, you have a base skill set. The experience behind that, I will say, is highly variable. I've seen people that aren't certified, we see this all the time, that look a very specific way that get people to pay them for their expertise, which frankly, they probably aren't equipped to give. And from that perspective, it's like, in the bodybuilding community, we see this all the time. You get like the bro coaches that, again, like they've maybe done a cycle or two and, maybe they've done their own competition or they've had a coach and they think that that confers the ability for them to coach. And while that's probably a good experience, there's not really a great knowledge basis for them to learn how to apply that differently for different people that have different circumstances and starting positions. So I will say that I don't have a great criteria for that, but it sounds like maybe you have something in mind that, for the sake of your part of the conversation, people should be assumptively like interpreting that through the lens of.
Yeah, on that side, I do think the very
Yeah.
basic things, again, there's a lot of coulds that can come up in this conversation, and we could have a entire
Mm-hmm.
conversation around what should you do before you try to get a paying client. So, maybe a future episode, but
Mm.
having
Yeah.
a certification and understanding some of the basics in ensuring you're going to keep somebody safe is probably the ground level knowledge that I think somebody should have, right? Do you need to know everything? Have 82 million different certifications, all of this stuff? Absolutely not. I think that that's just a reason of slowing down and wasting time. So I think what you said is good. I don't think there's anything else I would add to that list. And on the flip side of things, I would say before you get a paying client, you should probably have worked with somebody that you were able to get a result with from a business perspective for free, most likely, before you start going telling the
Mm-hmm.
world that, hey, they can come pay you for these services. And if it takes you 5 people to get that one person that has a result, which by the way, I wouldn't say is actually a bad thing, because not all clients will get results because of you. And a lot of times it is because of them, which is still because of you, but different conversation. But I would say just go out and one time have gotten somebody a result that you can then go talk about. You understand that delivery experience a smidge, like you kind of get it because you've done it, before you start asking somebody for money to go do that same exact thing. If you got one person a result and I was the
Well,
first person, amazing. Time to go start charging some people. So that would be my side of things. And coupled within that is the assumption that if you've been able to get somebody a result, you probably have some pool of audience of people to be able to pull from and tell what you do, to share the stories, etc. So just get that one person a result, and then from there I think it's kind of justified to go out and start charging something for your services.
mm. Yeah, I mean, in that vein, there's obviously more depth and richness, and I love the fact that you bring up. There's another podcast topic in here. What should you do before you start charging clients? Um, and thinking about that for a second, obviously the experience is one thing. What about the individuals that have experience in their own journey versus the people that have no experience in their journey but do have a certification desire to do that as a profession?
I think it comes down to scope per se. If you've been through a journey in your life and you understand certain things very well, and
Hmm.
we're talking about giving some information in a practical way that's relatable to your life. If you want to go out and give some information to somebody and help them get a result, I'm not opposed to it short term, but long term I still think there's so many nuances and fundamentals, depending, if you're going nutrition, if you're doing fitness, if you're doing overarching health, like there's such a wide array of opportunity to learn, or in other words, fuck shit up, that you need to go get some education around things in order to be better at your craft. Now, experience is big.
Yeah.
Understanding and navigating and being dumb enough to ask questions and knowing when you don't know the answer, like all of those things are key. And a certification gives you none of that stuff. And one certification will probably make you ask more questions about the world than answer questions that you had. So, are you actually smarter after one? Arguably, maybe not, but you should at least be qualified in some way, shape, or form to talk about the thing that you're doing and going through or teaching somebody else. So if you're going to go down the road of, hey, here's all the different ways you can do macros, I would have expected you to go through a program that talks about that. If you're talking to somebody about the 5 steps that you took to lose your weight on your journey, and that's all you do, I don't think you need a certification for that. As long as medically speaking, things aren't like outlandish and you're not sitting here saying you should be doing something that insert doctor, professional, or whatever should be recommending. So
Hmm.
knowing that difference, but I still think some type of certification, even if it's a basic weekend course where you learn some things, if you're talking about it, is essential from a just a posterity kind of purpose, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Mm.
We assume you got that base level of stuff. You've helped somebody create an outcome, and now it's time to charge. So Scenario based, I think, is probably going to be our best bet because we have online, we have in person, we have hybrid, we have nutrition, we
Mhm.
have fitness. There's so many different ways, but probably break down like 2 or 3 different versions here. Andrew, I'm going to throw it your way first, and I'm going to kind of go at it again, similar, but in person training, in person coaching in a gym, uh, big box gym, I would say, generally speaking, you're responsible for getting your own clients. What would that look like for you? Hey, Andrew, I need you to go out and find a client by the end of this week. What are you doing to get that first client?
I mean, I think it's all the same, frankly. It doesn't matter if it's online or in person. You got to go find someone to demonstrate, that you can solve a problem with. Now, kind of revisiting and kind of bridging the gap between the last thing of experience versus not. I don't think experience is necessary to start to charge people. And just to clarify the assumption, we're not talking about going out and charging 3, 4, 500 bucks a month for coaching. That's not the conversation. You can charge 50 bucks a month, and you can start to collect some dollars as you gain experience. Is it as skilled as is great? No, because frankly, you're not as skilled and you're not as great at that level if this is applying to you. Um, so with that out of the way, looking at how to get your first client, like obviously no one's going to walk up and say, hey, here's money. For the most part, they're more likely to do that in a brick and mortar. But why would they do that to you versus another personal trainer that they've seen working with people that are actually demonstrating that they have a skill set? And it doesn't even matter if it's great or not. So the first thing that you have to go do is you have to go and actually meet people. And then the second thing you have to do is identify if there's a need inside of that conversation. And then the third thing is to identify if you can figure out how you can solve that need, or if you can support them or lend any value, decrease the time to completion. And then the last thing is obviously offer that solution. And so these are the things you're constantly looking at. It doesn't matter if you're online, people do the cold DMs thing, people, you know, um, comment, people post content. There's so many different things that you could do to demonstrate that you have something that someone else might perceive as valuable, whether that's knowledge, whether that's experience, and different people would value different things. But if I had a week to go get a new client at a gym, I would definitely start talking to as many people as I could in the beginning of the week, figure out which people are probably more open to conversation versus the people that aren't, because some people are just a little more standoffish and it seems like 50-50. But if you can get probably 1 to 2 conversations out of every 10 people that you talk to, I would consider that pretty successful. And, you just spend your time where you feel you're valued, or where people are more open to suggestion. And I think that that's where you really start to find that fulfillment, and that fulfilling perspective. Although I will say that there was a young lady that I was mentoring at a big box gym recently, and she was getting really frustrated that in 5 weeks she had 5 clients. And it's kind of an interesting conversation when you think about, well, if you add one every week and you need 20 clients, how many weeks is that going to take you? And you kind of start to gain some certainty of that. But, that would be what I would say. Just go talk to people and kind of go through that process, find the need, offer, see if you can solve the need, offer the solution, and then kind of go from there and just wash, rinse, repeat. It doesn't change if it's your first client or your 50th client. You just get better at finding the need and solving it. But what about you, Steve? If you got to go find a client tomorrow,
So,
go to a conference.
so I go to a conference. I would disagree with you that online and in person are the same. There's principles and fundamentals that are 100% the same, but tactically speaking, there are some very
Yeah,
big
methods are going to
differences.
vary for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
because here's what I would do, which wouldn't overly work online. I'd go buy
Mm.
a case of Poland Spring water bottles. I would drink all those waters or pour them into something else, and I'd bring all the empty water bottles to the gym in my backpack. I would go to the machines that the guys who want to be able to lift heavy are likely sitting on just repeatedly. So the pec deck, things like that. Or over where the 40, 50-year-old women are kind of working out, just doing their thing. And I would leave a few of those water bottles around in that area, which is a very easy reason to walk up as a trainer and say, hey, I got to go clean this up. So walk up, pick that bottle up next to this guy on the pec deck who's just trying to get his chest ripped and all these things. Pick up the water bottle, make some fun comment around the idea of, yeah, people leaving garbage around, ha ha. And then they go, yeah, ha ha ha. And then that's the engagement into a conversation there. Um,
Mm.
would be my jump into. then I would just start the conversation, and just, oh, hey, how long you been coming? And just start asking those questions and understand. Most men want to be able to bench a lot of weight or things like that. So it's easy to like create that need and just throw down, hey, I'd love to actually, give you a free session one day and run through the process and see if we can't get that,
Mm-hmm.
70-pound pec deck to like 135-pound bench press, which most men that have never been are like, oh, that sounds heavy. I mean, it's not, but it is if you've never done it. So that would be my tactical process to go in, engage, and create conversations, kind of like you said. Um,
Yeah.
Throw garbage all over the gym and go pick it up.
Oh
Um,
my God.
tell me, tell
Yeah.
me that that's not a good idea, though. Come on.
No, I mean, yeah, it happened a lot at Lifetime. People would gain a lot of clients by just going and cleaning different pieces of equipment. So I don't know if I'd buy the water bottles versus just like take a cleaning rag and go and wipe and shit down. At a certain point, it becomes cost
I mean,
prohibitive. You're
either
like,
way, I'm buying the
Steve,
water bottle, so let me buy the whole case for
yeah,
$5 and then drink it and then throw them around the gym or not. So
yeah. They're like, Steve, you've thrown away 400 water bottles across the gym this week. You got to stop. And you're like, I
no,
don't. I've generated a full book,
exactly.
so.
I got my
Um,
20 clients in 3 days, bro.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because it's, you went more tactical, like visceral. I went more conceptual. And so I think it really does beg the point of like a lot of people don't know how to approach people to have that and broach that conversation. And I love the icebreaker conversation is like, well, how do you broach and like have the first disarming salvo? Because if you're like, hey, you want to buy training?
Yeah, doesn't
Mm,
go well.
that doesn't usually go
No.
well, and people see you do that and they'll see you go from person to person to person. And I've seen that. And like, pretty quickly that person was very poorly received across the rest of the member base. Um, I've seen people that, and one of the things I did was I would occasionally walk around and conduct surveys. I'd be like, hey, can I ask you some questions about your experience here? I'm new and I just want to make sure that, you as a member are having a great time. And if there's anything that we can do, and naturally they would, say whatever. And I would actually have my iPad and I would document what they're saying, which was valuable information for future reference. But and it gave me a reason to follow up with them if I needed to. That was very organic. And so that was probably the biggest way that I would do that stuff. There's also boothing. Some people will have a demonstration asset of like, hey, throw the bean bag in and get a free session. But I think the bridge is like, how do you get people from icebreaker to free session to solution slash offering? And that's, I think there's any number of ways you can go about that. Cleaning sounds like is one for you. Is there anything else that you had like that would be a great icebreaker for people in person before we maybe translate that same question to online?
Uh, Outside of that, I mean, when I worked at a big box gym, I literally stood at the front desk greeting every single person that
Mm-hmm.
came in, and especially like when the sales representatives for new memberships were in a selling process, I would basically
Mm-hmm.
stalk right where they were going to walk to show off the gym floor and be the first person that they met. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a function of volume and numbers
Yeah.
at that point in time, where if everybody saw my face, then everybody
Mm-hmm.
knew my face, and everybody knew my face, they were more comfortable to ask me a question. If they're more comfortable asking me a question, that was easy to get to a conversation. And that was really the process,
Mm-hmm.
which was a longer game. But by longer game, if people are
Yeah.
wanting training, it's 3-4 weeks within their first month of the gym membership that they're likely going to find that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, do a lot of work, and in 4 weeks you're busy. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um
Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to keep in mind too, is that these aren't going to be immediate yields. And anytime you're establishing reputation or brand development, brand awareness, like there has to be a proof of concept. And if you haven't had that many opportunities to actually conduct these free sessions and then follow up with these people that you gave a great experience to, it's going to take you time to build that bank.
yeah,
And 7 to 11 exchanges is baseline. And so when you think about it, if you want a full book of business, which is generally considered like 25 to 35 client hours per week, let's just say 30 for good clean numbers, like, 30 times 7 on the short end is you got to talk to the same 30 people 210 times, basically 7 times each, before you can sit across from them and they trust you enough to potentially pull out their wallet and say, cool, like I know you, I think I like you, and I don't know if I trust you or not yet, but I trust you enough to give you a session or two to prove that. Then I think that really starts to put things in perspective of like, how do you now take that thing that you've done one time, and how do you do it 6 more times to collect dollars from this individual? And then how do you do that repeatedly and reliably? And I think that that's really, from the small picture to the big picture, icebreaker to point of sale, how that process goes for what I've seen
Yeah.
work. But I think a lot of people think, oh, I just talked to them once. Oh, they don't want training. Let me go ahead and just, call it off and forget about it, and like basically not follow up with this person at all. And they're constantly going through the entrepreneurial lead syndrome, I believe is what you call it.
ELS.
Another acronym from Steve. ELS. Everyone always thinks they need more leads. No, they just need to build the relationships better and longer. And I think that that gives you the yield you're looking for, but you got to get into the conversation at first. So like looking at online, then Steve, what would you say is when you consider the online space, how does that differ in terms of icebreakers and starting conversations?
Yeah. So principle, just
Cold
trying to be
DMs.
able to have a conversation with somebody. Right. So the tactical side of that would be, where are the people that I can most likely serve, most likely connect with, hanging out on the internet? So are they in a Facebook group? Are they
Mm-hmm.
following a certain person on Instagram? Are they
Yeah.
engaging with somebody on TikTok? Like where are they? And figure that piece
Yeah.
out first. Then I would just go in and have as many, as daunting as it sounds, conversations. So cold
Yeah.
DMing people as I
Yeah.
possibly can. But caveat here, I'd ask the question, is a generic copy and paste, hey, are you looking to get in shape, or some basic dumb thing, going to have a better odds of getting a response, or is actually having a true conversation, being inquisitive, asking them questions, mentioning something maybe on their profile, whatever it is, going to get a better chance at
Yeah.
response, right? So yeah, you could bang through 100 people, copy and paste in under an hour. If you go custom, it's probably going to take you 3 to 4 hours, but I bet you the 3 to 4 hours are going to produce more conversations than the getting through it in an hour. So
Yeah.
I would honestly start with the cold DM. It is not a thing that I would say, hey, you should start this as the base level of your
Mm-hmm.
business and everything there, generally speaking. But I'm assuming you have no
Yeah.
real attention. You don't have a social media presence. You're not necessarily a known person in any circle. So if that's the thing, you're going to go out and just talk to as many people as possible, find the 15 to 20% that are willing to entertain the conversation. And of those, find the 10
Yeah.
to 20% that are willing to actually get on a call to see if they have a problem that you can help solve, so to speak. So that would be the first thing I
Yeah.
would do. Painful. This is not a cold DMing saves the world conversation. This is a, you need to
Yeah.
get your first client, and how do we get it within a week? That's what I would do.
Yeah. I definitely agree that it definitely is going to require that outreach. When I built an online coaching business of, like I only had 15 clients or something like that at the time, where I was also doing in-person stuff. I prefer the in-person stuff. Like, let me just get that bias out of the way, because I like the belly-to-belly interaction. I think that's just a richer medium of communication, and I just like connecting with people, frankly. But one of the things that I did early on, and this was circa like 2018, 2019, I went through and I did something called comment farming, where you would take some of the bigger personas. And I thought, because I had a couple people do the cold DM stuff. It wasn't huge back then. I think that started taking off like around COVID or so, in terms of my understanding. But you go through and they would post something on social media, and you would actually then farm the comments, meaning you knew that that post from that person was probably going to be guaranteed to get you a couple hundred comments. And you would go through and you would see that obviously the creators probably not, because this was back before VAs were a really big thing. So it was a lot more viable, and they weren't trying to hit every single comment. And so you would go in and you would just reply to comments of people that are asking for more information or asking for questions. And you're just giving them the tidbit. You kind of just, it's called, comment littering. You give them the piece, you give them the opinion. And if they respond back, now you have an exchange, and then you would take that and try to parlay that into a meeting with them. But for me, that always felt a lot more organic than having just a random outreach of someone getting an inbox that, it's just like, now I have to figure out how to quickly bridge that gap. And there's nothing wrong with that. It didn't feel as valuable based from me, which is why I would go in. Like, I think Lane Norton was a big one at the time. I think he was only at like 150,000, 200K followers, which in 2019 was massive. And I think he's at like 4 million or something crazy right now. But he would always have very inflammatory posts. And I would go in there and I would look for the people that were like, well, what about this or what about that? And I would look for people that were genuinely confused or seeking more information. I would respond and I would give them like a paragraph or so. Hey, let me know if I can ever help with anything. And that was it. Maybe I would hear from them. But I think across that year, I got to go see if I can find the spreadsheet. But I think I replied to somewhere around 400 comments. And that yielded me, I think I was like 14 clients from that specific type of marketing campaign. And I felt great about it because I felt like I was being useful. And they obviously didn't feel like they were being sold to. So that was one of the things that really worked for me to gain that part-time roster and filling that up pre-COVID. And then COVID just dried everything up. So that was just nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say as far as going from then bridging the gap of icebreaker to consult, for people that struggle to make that ask, Steve, what do you have for them on that one?
In the most loving way possible, get over it. If you actually want to go out, have a business, make money doing this profession, you just have to do it. And I realize that it's way easier said than done. But the more times you do it and the more times you get told no, the more times you're going to get a yes. And it's just a part of it. You have to ask that question. You have to do it in a way that's authentic to you and feels good to you. So that's the one caveat there, but like, just get over it.
Yeah.
You gotta.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely requires a little bit of a thick skin and not taking things personally, which I've always struggled with because I do very much care. And I used to care a lot more about clients' results than sometimes they would. And so that was really tough for me to try to convince them. But at the end of the day, I think detached caring is the concept of you care enough that you're willing to help them if they're looking for help. And I think that the tactical implementation of that is the work is the work at the end of the day. If you want to lose weight, you got to be in a calorie deficit. How are you going to be in a calorie deficit? Are you going to increase movement or decrease intake? Like, okay, cool. Then how are you going to do that? And when you start tracing these things out of like the how, well, what if this happens? Then how is that going to affect you? What if this happens? How is that going to affect you? The how is the reason why people are going to hire you, not the what. I know I need to strength train. Okay, well, what do I need to do? Well, I don't know what you need to do. I need to do an assessment. That's going to cost you money because that costs me time and it costs me my expertise, and you have a gap in that knowledge. So do you want to help or not? And so, the idea is as you're helping these people, as you're bridging the conversation, as you're actually now trying to position yourself to get them into that, if you're doing a free session, let's say, and you meet them on the pec deck and you see them kind of rubbing their shoulder a little bit as you're picking up the water bottles and you're like, hey, I see your shoulders bugging a little bit there. Like, do you do any kind of rotator cuff stuff? Do you have any like weird imaging, like got any injuries or anything like that? They're like, yeah, my doctor, whatever. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm a personal trainer here and I've helped some people increase their bench. Like, would you like help with that? It's the how. And now they say, yes. Okay, cool. You go through the session, you find out infraspinatus or supraspinatus or one of the rotator cuff muscles isn't sitting right. And it's something you could probably help them with. And you're like, hey, we should probably strengthen your rotator cuff. Do you know how to do that? No. Okay. Do you want help with that? Well, yeah, that would make sense because you don't want to have shoulder pain and like walk around like Quasimodo. So why don't we put you on the books, get you a couple sessions? And like, it's a very much an organic conversation because it's the how. Like, and if they don't want it, then okay, well, here's the thing that you need to do anyway. I don't know how you should do that because we don't have the assessment and the interaction, the history that I would have with my clients for me to best optimize that for you. So there's a learning curve for you and you're going to be in pain longer is kind of the subtext of that. But that's more or less what I would suggest is like, if you're weird about it and you're trying to bridge the conversation, you're like, I don't know how to ask for money. Ask them if they want the help versus asking them if they want to give you money. And it's a frame shift of it's no longer about you trying to separate them from a resource. It's about you offering them an opportunity to have their problem solved in a way that's a lot more caring and frankly, a lot more just clear than what they're going to find on Wikipedia or, I mean, I will say ChatGPT might fuck you up these days, but that thing's pretty good. But yeah, that's kind of how I would say you bridge the gap from icebreaker to session to sale to service to referral. It's like, hey, how can I help you get what you want? I don't know. Okay, well, let's take a look at what you're doing right now so we can change what you're going to get. And then we can kind of go from there. So I think that's pretty much what I would suggest is going from tip to tail first client, like anything that you have as it relates to like wrapping that up. Obviously We have a lot of thoughts and opinions, but
No, I think it just find opportunities to create a relationship, have a conversation. Should the
yeah.
conversation make sense, progress it to some type of interaction that's bigger than a conversation, which should lead to the
Yeah.
potential to offer up some help slash sell them. Like those, that's the way you're doing it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the water bottle trick is a tactic to be able to do it. The
Yeah.
sitting there and, throw playing cornhole and getting somebody to do push-ups is a way to do it. Do what feels good for you. But go out,
Mm-hmm.
meet people, have
Mm-hmm.
conversations, and show them how you can help them. And that's the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that really wraps us up here. I have nothing else as far as closing thoughts is, we gave you the principles, break the ice, find the problem, help them with a solution, and then literally just do that so many times. Your goal to have 50 conversations and I would say like 20 opportunities a week if you have no clients, because that's more or less what'll get you to move the needle. If you don't have any metrics, you're like, oh, I didn't talk to anybody, or I talked to so many people, and like you kind of start to get burnt out because you don't have a great finish line for the metaphorical race you're running. And I don't know about you, but if I start running, I want to know there's an end point, that's very clear and very concise. Otherwise, if I start running, I think it's a 5K, but it's a 26 miler. I'm like, I'm pissed, and I'm going to quit probably somewhere in between the 5K and the 26-mile mark. So give yourself those targets, see how it works out for you. But it's probably going to take you a little more effort than what you think. And you just want to try to track that as much as possible.
Love
So,
it.
yeah, that's all we got.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, like the episode, and throw a comment down there if there's something you want us to talk about. Until next time, gang, we'll see you later. Peace.